And blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Didn't miss a lot of folks last night at the Treasure Valley God and Country Festival, kicking off the 4th of July season. Thank you all for attending. Much more on that coming up, plus the latest concerning who will be the next president of the United States. But joining us now, he's getting into the regular status, Mark Meckler from the Citizens for Self-Governance. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. How are you?
Not bad. Good to have you with us back here in Idaho. And, of course, you're a Pacific time, so this is pretty early for you.
Actually, I moved to Texas, so now I'm on Central time. So I'm a little bit later than you are.
I love the Central Pacific Mountain.
It's a little bit confusing. And I'm sorry I missed the God and Country Festival. That sounds like it was incredible.
It was. It rivaled our debate watch parties. In fact, about 50,000 people talk about God and country. And, Mark, I know you'd like America to get back to speaking about God and country.
Oh, for sure. Look, and I actually think lots of people are. You see it when you hold a God and Country Festival, you have all those people show up. That's going on all over America. It's just not what we see in the media from the coastal elites.
Speaking of the state of America, we've got these Democratic debates going on. They all seem mad, along with their friends on MSNBC. As a person who has been a veteran of the national media wars and continue to do so, what are your thoughts on the coverage and the usual suspects so far?
If you look at the debates, I think it's really interesting, actually, because to me the standouts are the moderates. And maybe that's because I'm not a communist, and so watching Bill de Blasio is kind of shocking. But I would say that the person that was the most standout at the debate last night was Tulsi Gabbard. And if you listen to Tulsi Gabbard, there's a lot that you and I and Tulsi Gabbard would agree upon. She comes across as really reasonable and rational. She's a veteran, so she has experience in the military. Tim Ryan seemed like a relatively reasonable guy. And so I thought it was really interesting to see the contrast between the majority of the radical leftist candidates, from socialist, soft socialist to hard communist, and then to see people like Gabbard and Ryan stand out for their being just kind of rational commentary.
But you have to wonder what the future is of the Democratic Party. You have such an extreme on the left, and you have these folks from the Midwest, and Gabbard, of course, from Hawaii, that don't share their beliefs. And then you have Joe Biden, who I suppose wants to be the Democratic version of the president.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the party. I think we're going to witness really a test of the Democratic Party. Is the Democratic Party, has it become truly anti-American? Is it truly communist? Is it truly against American ideals? I think, again, one of the problems that we have in our media is the mainstream media tends to be made up, or is wholly made up, of coastal elites. And so the perspective that we get on America is not the true perspective, either Democrat or Republican, frankly. And so seeing this and watching this unfold in the party, it's going to be really interesting. Will the party continue its radical leftward turn, or will it return to some sort of normalcy where, people who actually love America and go to church and love God have a place in the Democratic Party? I think the answer to that remains to be seen.
Mark Meckler joining us here, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Mark, the president of Citizens for Self-Governance Convention of States. Of course, you can catch him on the Daily Caller, opinion editor as well. Mark, you've got a lot going on. Let's take a look at a report that you talked about, former members of Congress now lobbying their colleagues. And I'll give you the Kevin Miller softball. What's wrong with that?
Well, first of all, I think it's interesting to look at the numbers. So of the last congressional class, not this year, but last year, those who retired, over 60% of them went into lobbying. And here's what's wrong with it. It's the fact that they're using the influence that they gained because we voted for them, we put them into office, and they went there to do public service. And when they come out, they're literally making millions of dollars lobbying the government to give people millions of dollars or billions of dollars. And so here's what's the inherent flaw in that system is if you're a congressman and some man or woman walks into your office and they're wearing the $3,000 suit and they've got their Porsche parked in the garage and that they'll tell you about their second home on Martha's Vineyard or the vacation they just took with the family in the Caribbean, and they're implying to you that you can have that life too when you come out of Congress, if only you'll cooperate with them. And so what it does is it creates a situation where congressmen and women are incentivized to do special favors for lobbyists. And none of this is illegal, by the way. Do special favors for lobbyists so that when you get out, you can have this wonderful life, too.
Mark Meckler joining us, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. I guess the case in point would be former Speaker of the House, John Boehner.
Yeah, John Boehner now an owner of and the biggest spokesperson for the marijuana industry. I mean, I don't think most people know that, and I think most people would be pretty shocked by that. But certainly he's gotten out of Congress. He's making millions and millions of dollars building up the marijuana industry, and he's using all the connections that he made while he was in Congress and while he was Speaker of the House to allow him to build that business. And I think if we just simply prohibit it, if we just say congressmen and women, senators, people who have earned our trust and our votes can't turn that into a lucrative business, and we just ban them from lobbying, a lifetime ban on lobbying if you serve, we're going to remove the incentive structure that causes people to do bad things in Congress.
What do you make of the idea of term limits?
You know, I have mixed feelings about term limits personally. You know about our Convention of States project, obviously, and term limits is one of the things to be discussed. But my feelings are mixed. I think with a package of other stuff, with term limits on staffers and bureaucrats and limitations on the power of Congress, I think term limits are a good thing. I think if you do term limits alone, I think it's incredibly dangerous. And here's the reason why. It sounds good. We're excited to get these guys out of office. But then you empower staffers and bureaucrats who will be there, 20, 25, 30 years. They'll be the ones with the real power, not the congressmen and senators that have been around for a long time. So I actually think term limits are a mixed bag. We have them in 23 states, and if you look at the states that have term limits on their elected officials, what you see is at very best no net benefit on the size of government. In other words, government grows at the same rate, government power grows at the same rate, and in some cases we see after term limits are imposed, government grows astronomically.
All right, Mark, let's get to it. How's Mr. Soros, and are you continuing to devise a plan to destroy the Republic?
Of course I am, according to our enemies and frankly, enemies of the Republic. The Convention of States project is going incredibly well. We've passed recently Mississippi, Arkansas, and Utah. We're still pending in legislatures, year-round legislatures, which are the roughest in Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Good stuff going on there. We're setting up for next year. I've been traveling around the country, meeting with our regional folks all over the country in different states, and I think it's going incredibly well. I mean, if you watch what's going on in Washington, D.C., everybody will tell you we've got to do something because what's going on there is just a mess. And so the growth has been absolutely astronomical, hard to keep up with, actually. We're getting all our grassroots together in August, all our leadership in Williamsburg, Virginia. So I couldn't be happier with what's going on.
A little disappointed you're not going to have everybody come here.
Well, it's hard to get there compared to Williamsburg, Virginia. And here's why we're going to Williamsburg, really. In Williamsburg, Virginia, if you've never been to colonial Williamsburg, it's one of the birthplaces of the nation. They've preserved colonial Williamsburg, so a lot of the old buildings are there. You can go, you can tour, you can get the feel of what it was like. And you literally get a chance, it sounds crazy, but you get a chance to sit down with Patrick Henry and James Madison and George Washington. They have the best historical reenactors in the world are there. These guys actually live on site without running water, without electricity. They know all the writings, all the speeches, all the mannerisms of all these guys. So to get a chance to just sort of drape yourself in that kind of history, because frankly, we're at a moment like this again. Back in 1787, back at the time of the American Revolution earlier, these guys were facing a crisis, an existential crisis for liberty. We're at that same moment in history. So that's why we gather all our grassroots there. We want them to have that sense of history, know what happened then, but understand their place in that history today.
What would a convention of states look like when we're taking a look at the Constitution? How would that change?
Well, so the Convention of States is limited to 3 subject matter areas. The only thing that can be discussed are things that would put fiscal restraints on the federal government, like a balanced budget amendment, like making them use regular, generally accepted accounting principles, things like that. Anything that would impose term limits, and that's not just term limits on Congress, but term limits on the judiciary, staffers, bureaucrats, the deep state, as I would call it broadly. and then anything that would impose scope and jurisdiction restraints on the federal government. So a great example of that is the federal government shouldn't be involved in education. Thomas Jefferson said it would take a constitutional amendment to get the government involved in education. We haven't had that, but of course the government spends hundreds of billions of dollars on it and failed spending. And so those are the subject matter areas that would be discussed. Every state would send a delegation. They would be limited to discussing those things. Hopefully, they would make suggestions at the end of a convention. It's really important people remember in a convention itself, it's just a suggesting body. All they can do is make suggestions. They have no power whatsoever. They make those suggestions, and then those suggestions in the subject matter areas I talked about would go out to the states, and it would take 38 states to ratify. So that's kind of the basic process.
Mark, anything else you want to say to people here that want more information?
Yeah, well, two things. One is get involved, because you need to be involved, because we're not going to save the country without you, and you can get involved at conventionofstates.com. Number two is, as we come to the 4th of July and Independence Day, remember what those people put on the line and the work they did and what they were willing to sacrifice so that we could become this great independent experiment in liberty. And then ask yourself, what am I doing to preserve that experiment in liberty? That's something we should all do on the 4th of July.
Mark Meckler, we always appreciate you. Thank you, sir.
Great to be with you, Kevin. Thanks for the time.
Our great friend Mark Meckler. You can find out more about him at Convention of States. And if you want to comment on Mark's comments, we know a lot of folks have issues with Mark and his comments concerning the Convention of States. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. We'll get your reaction next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio.
When you've got a government, when you've got an economy that does great for those with money and isn't doing great for everyone else, that is corruption, pure and simple, we need to call it out, we need to attack it head on, and we need to make structural change in our government, in our economy, and in our country.
I would do several things, starting with something we should have done a long time ago, which is to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, finally in this country. And also pursue legislation so that women are paid equal pay for equal work in this country.
This economy has got to work for everyone. And right now we know that it isn't. And it's going to take all of us coming together to make sure that it does. Necesitamos incluir cada persona en el éxito de esta economía.
When it comes to antitrust law, what I will do is, number one, appoint judges that will enforce it. Number two, have a DOJ and a Federal Trade Commission that will go through the processes necessary to check this kind of corporate concentration.
There we have it. The usual suspects last night taking your phone calls. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Who can be the most extreme? Who can pander the most? Well, we'll let you figure that out. Maybe you watched it. Maybe you went to a movie. Maybe you worked in the garden. Maybe you just actually had a life. Who knows? But it is crazy when you just hear the tone of these people and just how angry they are. You know, when the Republicans were running, they didn't agree with President Obama, but they didn't have this anger. And the libs really are angry. They're still angry. They are still mad about losing and continuing to lose. I mean, does anybody think that this person is presidential?
Civil rights is some place to begin, but in the African-American civil rights community, another place to focus on was to stop the lynching of African-Americans. We do not talk enough about trans Americans, especially African-American trans Americans, and the incredibly high rates of murder right now.
Okay. Agree with Senator Booker or not, but African American, pardon me, African trans Americans, African, I don't know. Can we get rid of the hyphenated Americans? Can we really just get rid of that whole phrase? And, you know, Senator Booker, I'm glad that you're passionate. You have wonderful facial expressions. But let's talk about real issues, like the violence going on in Chicago or Miami or Los Angeles or New York City. You know, this one segment that you're pandering to because you believe that that's your ticket to the White House. When it comes to any politician at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, I mean, who really is convincing? Who really, you know, makes you want to follow them?
We don't talk enough about how many children, about 30% of LGBTQ kids, who do not go to school because of fear.
Okay. I guess that's where he wants to place his political muscle.
There is no one in our government at any level who has the right to tell any American who they should be allowed to love or who they should be allowed to marry.
Didn't the Supreme Court already decide this?
Record in Congress for over 6 years shows my commitment to fighting for LGBTQ equality. I serve on the Equality Caucus and recently voted for passage of the Equality Act.
And here we thought we had been done with all the caucuses. I guess there's the Equality Caucus now, right? Is there an Inequality Caucus? Traffic and weather together. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Robin. Let's go to Bryce in Middleton with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Bryce.
Morning, Kevin. Good talk to you again.
Thank you, brother. Good to see you.
I didn't actually watch the debate last night. I just caught a little bit of it, what they were saying on the radio. They have gone. Talk about equality. I would say we have bigger problems in this state with. Did you know in this state, if you want to get a state job, that you almost have to speak Spanish?
You're saying if you want to get a state job, you have to speak Spanish?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
You get points. You get points for being bilingual, and Spanish is one of the languages. Is the language English?
Well, who would need English speakers? Everybody just speaks English, and Bryce, that's another unfortunate capitulation that state governments, federal governments have had. We're rewarding people for not assimilating, not speaking the language, and we have such self-loathing, such lack of respect. We don't require people to speak the language of the nation that they live in, that they get benefits from, that they get protection from. It's sad.
Well, yeah, and these illegals come and they get free health care and housing and food, and people like you and I work our butts off to pay for it, and you don't get free anything.
No, we get the shaft.
Exactly.
No, you're right. And if you would say that anywhere else, we would be called mean-spirited people and other things.
Well, I'll tell you, my wife's been looking for a job. And a lot of the jobs she's looked at, they ask if you're bilingual. Not.
Right.
Because we're United States citizens. Speak English. So I don't understand. I don't know what to do about that. I mean, shouldn't we talk to our legislators about this?
I would talk to your legislators. They're listening right now. What would you say to them?
Well, we need to change this where if you come to this country, you need to speak English. If you can't speak English, you shouldn't be getting help.
Oh no, I would agree with you on that. Wholeheartedly.
And I just beside myself after I heard about this.
I personally find it insulting wherever I am if anybody's speaking another language besides English. I've been fighting that one for almost 25 years. I think it's insulting to people here. It's exclusionary, and it's almost like you're a member of the little club. Well, if you want to be a member of the club, go back to the country where that language is spoken.
I agree.
Yeah, I maybe other people would agree with us as well.
Well, I got to say, Kevin Miller, I thoroughly enjoy your show. I agree with you about 99% of the time, and God bless you.
God bless you, my friend Bryce. Take care.
You have a good day.
You too. Coming up next, the city of Boise is spending money so you can be kind. Do you really need the city to tell you how to be kind? You won't believe what they're up to next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. And coming up, President Trump saying the war with Iran would not involve ground troops and will not last long. We'll take your phone calls on that and other issues that matter to you with me, Kevin Miller, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, KIDO Talk Radio, your proud home for Fox News on the radio. Joining us now from London, Simon Owen. Simon, good morning.
Morning, Kevin.
So speaking of the Iranians, it's all about breaching the limit on its enriched uranium stockpile today. That's supposed to be the big news coming out of Tehran. What's the latest?
Yeah, that was certainly the threat. Today is the day that Iran marked on calendars last week as the date by which it said it would have breached one of the central restrictions in the 2015 nuclear deal with world powers. And amid all the recent tensions with the United States, whether it's the U.S. accusing Iran of attacking oil tankers or Iran shooting down an American drone, all of these go back to the nuclear deal, the deal that the U.S. quit last year, this agreement curbing Iran's nuclear program in exchange for Iran winning relief from sanctions. And since that withdrawal, the deal has remained in place. The other signatories have been fighting to keep it alive, but recently Iran has been suggesting it's losing patience, hence this threat to blow through the stockpile limit, which Iran agreed. Now, whether this has actually happened yet, we don't know. There's a report on the Reuters news agency which says not yet. But if it's not today, then it sounds like we're perhaps only a few days from this limit being breached. It sounds like it's coming one way or another, whether it's today or maybe tomorrow or perhaps some point over the weekend.
You know, the U.S. has ratcheted up sanctions. Tehran has ratcheted up the rhetoric. What's the European perspective of all this?
Well, they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place on this because they want the nuclear deal to survive. They believe that this is the best way to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, to put restrictions on its program and in return help its economy out. But at the same time, they've been very clear in Europe that they don't believe that necessarily this is something that can go unpunished if Iran does end up, if it's verified and confirmed that it has breached one of the central pillars of this agreement. The German foreign minister said, we will certainly not accept a unilateral reduction of obligations. So, they believe that this deal should stay. They are pretty anxious about the state of relations between the US and Iran because what the Europeans are warning of is an accidental conflict breaking out. They don't think either side wants a war, but they say that with all these escalations, shooting down a $100 million drone and this sort of thing, that's the sort of incident which could potentially lead to something which neither side wants, and it could escalate out of control. So, look, they're trying to keep this deal going, and the fact that we haven't had confirmation from Iran that this stockpile limit has been breached, that may buy a few more hours. And there is actually a meeting tomorrow of senior diplomats from all the remaining signatory countries to the Iran deal. That's perhaps, if it's not the final chance, it's another final chance to try and keep this deal alive. But ultimately, the Europeans, there's only so far they can go, and they've talked about setting up some kind of complicated new payment system which might help Iran's economy slightly, but there doesn't seem to be any rabbit in the hat that could necessarily placate all of Iran's concerns about the damage that's being done to its economy by the Trump administration's sanctions.
It continues on. Simon, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Simon Owen joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
At the State of the City address in 2018, Boise Mayor Dave Beater announced the rollout of the Boise Kind Initiative, a campaign aimed at spreading kindness throughout the community.
He was being asked by the community members to preserve the kindness in our community because we know that it's unique to Boise.
The city hired the Boise-based PR firm Spark Solutions last December to market the campaign for 1 year to the tune of $80,000. So far, Lana Gray Beal, who works for the city, says the contract's been worth it.
The week-long events, all of those partnerships, all of the connections that they helped us make with the steering committee members and nonprofit organizations was invaluable to making this the success that it was.
It's a lot of money for the city to just fork out.
Yeah, just to fork out. So I would ask for donations instead because everybody wants a clean town, city,
friendly,
everything.
Happy place to live.
Happy,
right?
yep.
I think it's important. I think, of all the things that we could spend money on, I think that that's something that is a good way to put it to use.
Gray Beal likened the $80,000 contract to startup costs. And while the city hopes to continue this campaign for years to come, she says hiring an outside company may not be necessary.
And now that we've been through it, we're almost done with year one, we'll reevaluate, what we need help with next year and whether or not we need outside help to make that happen.
The city spent an additional $4,000 marketing Boise Kind Day itself, which took place last Saturday. Gray Beal says at least 600 volunteers turned out.
There was over 161 volunteers pulling goat heads in Halls Gulch, Camel's Back, as well as Military Reserve and at Warm Springs Park along the Greenbelt. There was, I believe, over 200 volunteers who helped spruce up 2 parks as well as 2 community gardens, as well as an area along the Greenbelt and Veterans Memorial.
Martha Barbeck, who works for the Boise Parks and Rec, says $4,000 for all the work that was done Saturday was well worth it.
There we have it from our friends at Channel 7. So $4,000 in a day to organize people to do the right thing. The reason why the city of Boise is sending out press releases now defending Be Kind Day is because the growing influence of you, the growing influence of our discussion, and this isn't hyperbole, this isn't hype. You have powers that be. The establishment liberal progressive Politburo that has had Dave Beater in office for a long time and his acolytes on the city council. And if Donald Trump can be elected, who knows what could happen in the city of Boise. People are tired of the high taxes. They're tired of the mayor being the king of the ribbon cutters. And this is not a personal attack on Mayor Beater. He appears to be a very nice, likable young man. On the other hand, Mayor Beater has declared Boise a welcoming city. Now, welcoming to who? The illegals? You have the incident a couple years ago, the lighting of the Christmas tree. When you had folks coming in from another country, why not have the Americans here? Why not have native Idahoans doing that? Or people that, believed in Christmas. Maybe they did. I don't know. It just seemed kind of odd. This odd type of behavior. Now, the mayor and his people that are paid to listen to the mayor, well, they can say that this show is extremist, and try and marginalize us. But the fact that this story is on Channel 7, and the fact that you have people out there defending, spending $80,000 to tell people what their parents, grandparents, godparents, and anybody else with a brain would tell them and show them would be great. You want to do something about Boise Kind? Give that $80,000 to the police officers to start patrolling the connector or the Flying Y to stop all the speeders and the nitwits that weave in and out of traffic, right? You want to talk about Boise Kind? Do something of the people that cut off the truckers that cause accidents. You want to talk about Boise Kind? Give that $80,000 to ISP so they can actually enforce laws, or to the city of Eagle so they can patrol State Street at 4 or 5 in the morning when people are going about 70 miles an hour. It is not safe. Sending out a press release and saying be kind and picking up goat heads is nice, but that's kind of like going against, in my thoughts, the Bible. And this is how it is. If you have to tell somebody that you did something good, doesn't that defeat the purpose? And remember, what the Lord talked about. He said, you go pray in private. You don't get on the mountaintops and tell everybody about how righteous you are. You don't get on and say, look, I prayed. Look, I was kind. Look, I said you're welcome. What's next, Boise? You're welcome? Thank you. You're welcome. We paid another $80,000 for that. This is a sensitive issue in an election year involving a mayor who's got, 4 or 5 contenders. Now, he's going to have the big money. He's got the name recognition. He's got the liberal progressive establishment, primarily out of the North End, that are happy with what they've done and what they continue to do to the city of Boise. Remember, this is the mayor that begged President Obama, according to President Obama, to nationalize the Boulder White Clouds. This is the mayor, along with the liberal city council in the city of Boise, that voted to endorse Obamacare in a non-binding resolution, even though it had nothing to do with the city of Boise. They fear that their grip on power. I mean, if you are a moderate, if you're a conservative, if you're an agnostic when it comes to politics, wouldn't it be nice to have a mayor that actually did things besides cut the ribbons or continue to expand the bike lanes at the expense of commerce and safety within the city, or has dreams of public transportation? This is not Portland, this is Idaho. Or has dreams of the trolley car that we're going to bring back. Thank you, Dave Lister and the Lister family, for stopping that. It's silly and ridiculous that you have people paying, well, your tax dollars. Now, you know, when you get your tax bill, okay, there's the assessment from the county. And then the city of Boise, well, we have to improve the schools. Well, we have to, we have to build new businesses. And again, props to the people that have decided enough is enough. And how goofy is this, where you have the city council, they're so confused on whether or not they're going to have a vote, allowing people to say no to this ridiculous overpriced stadium and this library. So, of course, the mayor wants people to be kind. Now, here's another one. Be kind and vote to increase your taxes for the library and the downtown stadium. Be kind and don't criticize the lib politicians. Be kind and fork over your money for people that are here legally and illegally. Be kind, because if you don't, you're a mean person. Now, for the sake of entertainment purposes only, in the past we'd launched the Be Mean initiative. Well, nobody likes mean people, but there is so much more that money could have gone to. And remember, this is an administration that how many years ago spent $80-90 grand. They seem to love to employ public relations people, $80,000 or $90,000 to teach people how to use the recycle trash bins. You remember that? So if you're a person that lives or works in Boise, wouldn't it be great to have leadership that actually reflected your traditional conservative Idaho values, as opposed to leadership that reflects the Portland values? And I just sit there and I go, $80,000 to tell people to be kind. And of course you're going to have the people that are employed by the city saying it's worth it. What are they going to say? Yeah, we ripped you off. You look at the work of the great nonprofits. They don't do it with a press release and a government person, do they? It's utterly ridiculous and irresponsible. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I just look at this and I go, man, I just sit back and I'm going, 80,000. I mean, imagine if it were Meridian. Imagine if Mayor Tammy, and there's going to be a big battle in Meridian going on over who succeeds Mayor Tammy, who's had an incredible run. I only hope that whoever succeeds these mayors actually can coordinate with ACHD so they don't block up all the darn roads. As we see in Meridian and Boise and Nampa, it's just boom, right? I mean, wouldn't you like that? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think back. Let's say Mayor Kling all of a sudden said this in Nampa. Okay, we're going to spend $80,000 to teach you how to be kind. Well, that's a kick in the shins to anybody who has been around kids or has been a responsible person. You don't need government telling you how to be kind now, do you? Steve in Meridian with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Steve.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. I love what you're saying this morning, man. I totally agree with you so wholeheartedly, because on the surface, be kind. Who doesn't favor be kind? But then you look at the real impact. It's a waste of time and money, and it's essentially, preaching how to be righteous. And that's not really something people are going to respond to with real meaningful action. Nobody's going to be against kindness. Here, I have an example for you. You know the Freak Alley Gallery downtown with the paintings on the walls?
Sure.
And I think it's really cool. I love artwork and everything. And my two children and I, last year, got a particular spot where we got to paint our own section of it. It was really a fun experience for our family. And, the city promotes inclusiveness, we accept everybody, et cetera, et cetera. You accept everybody so long as they're not Christian, so long as they're not conservative, so long as they don't stand for traditional values. As an example, you look at that Freak Alley Gallery and there's ghosts and goblins and all these, death pictures of skulls and all this stuff. And it's cool artwork, but it promotes, negative stuff in that underground kind of a culture. But if you have a Bible verse, God forbid, that is absolutely taboo, and that will never be painted on a wall. Another example is the whole pride thing. I'm not bashing any particular group of people, but what I am saying is people promote inclusiveness so long as you're part of their values. And I believe the mayor of Boise is a starting point. And the various people that support his staff are so one-sided that they are literally trying to change the culture of downtown Boise, and that's spreading like a disease, really, to the end where it's okay. If you don't have a rainbow flag in your restaurant, then they demonize you. And, as a Christian, I don't need somebody shoving their sexuality in my face. I don't need a person telling me, oh, we want you in our restaurant, but God forbid if you wear a Make America Great Again hat. God forbid if you have a Bible verse on a T-shirt. We don't want you in our restaurant unless you've got a rainbow-colored shirt on, et cetera, et cetera. And so I really am hopeful with prayer and meaningful action and talking about it and then following it with, like I said, action, 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 by electing greater leaders who actually do not just preach how to be kind, but show how to be kind. And that means having values like the Christian community that really, is around the Treasure Valley. So I don't know where else you want to go with this conversation, Kevin, but I just feel troubled because I spend time in downtown Boise and it's so left, so liberal, so one-sided, so anti-Bible, anti-Christian, and the mayor of Boise does nothing to protect that conservative Christian community, and it's disturbing. And so thank God for Meridian as an example of a town that hasn't lost its marbles because it's got better leadership, in my opinion. So,
Steve, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry about that. You have a great day, Steve. 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
Guaranteed high-quality health care, a world-class public school education system because we get behind world-class public school educators. Criminal justice reform in this country, confronting the challenge of climate change before it is too late.
I think Beto should run for the mayor of Boise. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Laws around election advertising are very out of date. Right? I mean, what we've seen, a lot of laws around elections today are basically political ads are defined as ads around a candidate or an election specifically. That's not really what we saw Russia do primarily in 2016. They tried to get people agitated around different issues. So, if you want to play and prevent that, it's more important to broaden out the laws to focus on things that are more issue oriented.
Anybody really understand what he said? Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. That was the Mark Zuckerberg. Traffic and weather together, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Robin. And I'm Kevin Miller in the morning. Coming up next, we take a look at, some big issues impacting the Treasure Valley and, of course, impacting you. Most dealing with culture. This continuing controversy going on between the president and members of the U.S. national women's soccer team. You have one member saying she's, quote, not going to the blanking White House. And this is the same young lady, Megan Rapinoe, who says that she's not singing the national anthem. And she's representing our country. And really, just the behavior of the U.S. women's national team has been below standards of our great nation. We'll talk about it next. Kevin Miller, stay with us. We're just getting started. KIDO Talk Radio.